This is Chapter 9, Later Asian Art, Part 1. I hope you remember some of the things we saw in the first Asian art, early Asian art, and the origins of Buddhism and Hinduism and those things, and some Chinese art as well. So here's our map of Asia, and we're going to follow the same course, more or less, where we will start again in India. And this time, instead of going down to Indonesia, we're going to take a side trip to Cambodia and look at Angkor Wat, then go up to China. At that point, after China, we will have a break into part 2, and there may be another break. Anyway, and then go to Korea and Japan for the final section. So, India and Southeast Asia. The Kandariya Mahadeva Temple is a northern type of Hindu temple built in around 1000 CE and dedicated to the god Shiva. An imaginary axis mundi runs from the finial to the image of the deity below. The halls serve as a place for rituals. Sculpted figures of gods, goddesses, and erotic couples enrich the delineation of architectural form. And you will see all of that. So here's the Kandariya Mahadeva Temple in Khajuraho, Madhya Pradesh, India. Good pronunciation. And I hope you can see that it looks kind of modular, like there are 4 units attached with them growing in size from this shortest one here to the next one and next one, finally to the tallest one. So what I just read described an axis mundi, which is Latin for axis of the world, that runs from the very tip of this tower, straight vertical line down through the center of this module. And in the center, directly under that, is a statue of Shiva, which I will not be showing you. But we're mainly just looking at the architecture and the architectural decoration here. So you can see that each one of these modules has a porch that has some columns that support it, and in no way does this resemble anything that we saw around the Mediterranean. It doesn't look Egyptian, doesn't look ancient Near East or Greek or Roman, none of that. So it's a completely unique style of architecture. And I'll be saying that several times just to point it out, that that's one large way that cultures differ. So here's a review. This is our earlier religious structure, which was the Great Stupa at Sanchi that we saw, that had the relics or the ashes of the Buddha in it. And now we're looking at Hindu temples, and there's 2 different styles. We're not even going to look at a southern style, so I'm not totally sure why that's included, so just ignore it. But we're looking at the northern style here, which has these modules getting larger and larger. Also want to point out that here there's a lot of vocabulary, and you really don't even need to know that. You just need to recognize this as a Hindu temple and that it was dedicated to the god Shiva. So this diagram shows you where inside of this tallest unit the statue of Shiva would have been seated in a chamber there. So here's some sculpture from the exterior. I've tried to confirm that it's this temple. If it's not this very same temple, it's from another very similar one. These are called the Mithuna reliefs, the detail of the north side of Vishnavata Temple. Oh yeah, it's a different temple. I did do my diligence on that. The sculptural detail here shows the sexual subjects, shows many very sensual and sensually naturalistic figures. Some are involved in erotic poses, and this was all allegorical reference to the union between humans and deities. So it was to sort of represent that oneness or that togetherness that was part of the Hindu beliefs. you might choose to come back to that. I don't know. India and Southeast Asia. So two developments affected Hindu practice and art: tantric or esoteric in the north, and bhakti or devotional in the south. Don't worry about those again. They're not in red. The bronze Shiva Nataraja embodies bhakti, displaying the god as fully aware of his benevolent powers. The have no fear mudra or gesture is coupled with a gesture of liberation. So here's the most commonly seen form of Shiva, or the avatar of Shiva, and that is with multiple arms and dancing the dance of creation, destruction. I've even had an Indian student tell me that the earlier Shiva I showed you was not a Shiva. I thought, yes, it was. It's just really early. So this Shiva dancing has four arms, and the four arms are not to be literally interpreted as Shiva having four arms, but that he is so complex. He has many aspects to his person that it's represented or symbolized with four arms. His dance is inside of a ring of fire. So these are sort of little symbolic flames coming out of it. This particular ring of fire in fact, is dragons. So dragons spewing out. And you can see a dragon head here and a dragon head here, and they're spewing out the ring that is causing the fire. Then look under Shiva's foot, his right foot, and you can see a tiny little figure under it that looks like a baby kind of curled up, and he's standing on it. It could seem really frightening. But that's an allegorical figure as well. This is a dwarf that represents ignorance. So Shiva, the creator, destroyer deity, is keeping ignorance down. He's promoting enlightenment and knowledge, we can assume. His passive expression reflects the acceptance of the dance as part of the cosmic design. So here, Shiva Nataraja. And here to remind you is the earlier Shiva I showed you. So that artist at that time had a particular way of illustrating the complexity of the deity. And you can see in the right-hand figure that has altered somewhat. So instead of having multiple heads, now this Shiva has multiple arms with different mudras showing. And here's another Shiva Nataraja in his ring of fire. So some things are very similar. The flames coming out of the outside, the little dwarf down here, the pose, the arms. This one has more things radiating out from his head. I'm not real sure what they are, but anyway. Yeah, I just wanted to show you another Shiva Nataraja. So when I said this is the most commonly seen form of Shiva, it totally is. So now we have seen Islamic art, and now we're going to see what happens when Muslims come to India and they bring their religion, but a culture that is more rooted in Persia than it is in India. So the Mughal Empire came to India, bringing art and culture in addition to religion. The Muslim Mughal Empire were the most powerful rulers in South Asia. The Mughals' impression on art occurred mainly in the 16th and 17th century. So this is way late now. We're approaching modern times. Akbar was a ruler, and he created an imperial atelier of painters. Atelier just means like a great big studio or a place where artists could work. And the atelier created many books, and I'm going to show you some of them. They tempered Persian lyricism with Indian naturalism, which is what I've been showing you with all of these very sensual figures in Indian art, the Indian naturalism, which was not present in Persia, by the way. And I have some bonus features here because I enjoy this illustration so very much. So this is Akbar, and he's riding the elephant named Hawaii. It's great. Akbar the Great was, like that slide said, he was one of the early Mughal, I don't know what they were called, emperors, I guess. And in his atelier, from his atelier, he commissioned the Hamza Nana, the story of Muhammad's uncle Hamza, and the Akbarnama, which was the story of his life. So this one is from the Akbarnama. So it's an illustration of an event that supposedly happened to the Emperor Akbar. So Akbar mounted an elephant named Hawaii and chased a rampaging elephant away to a bridge, causing the collapse of the bridge. But he kept control of the elephant and dismounted, showing his ability to rule under pressure. So he saves the day. This elephant in front of Hawaii here was rampaging through a village, and Akbar saved the day by jumping onto Hawaii and driving the other elephant out of town. I love this illustration because of all these really fun details of the bridge collapsing here under the weight of the elephant, of people that have fallen into the water who are trying to get out, people in boats trying to save the people in the water, people running to the rescue up here, and we even have this fortification in the distance that is very small in comparison to what's happening here. This is a really well drawn illustration as well, and it's powerful. It engages the viewer because the most important part, which is here, the two elephants are large and they're dominant. They're sort of surrounded by the water and they're beautifully drawn. They're on this diagonal. But look at the details, and I included this detail over here, of the elephant showing the various shading of the ears, for example, the shading on the trunk. Just shows a lot of attention to detail. And to me, I think you can understand why I would show this to you, because it's just so cool. So it's Akbar and the elephant Hawaii. Then another emperor, this is Jahangir. He succeeded Akbar. He considered himself an art connoisseur also, and kept an atelier, and also had many books written and books about himself. So this is Jahangir and Shah Abbas. So Jahangir is the man in blue and green, and this is Shah Abbas here. Now, the language here, the symbolism, it is so easy to read, but I'm going to help you read it because you're still kind of new to art. But you can see that Jahangir is taller than the other man, so that makes him clearly more important. He's also shown stronger. Just look at the pose of Shah Abbas with his head sort of tilted up. He looks like he's needing help and strength. He's drawing that from Jahangir. Then look where Jahangir's head is. This is the orb of the sun, which is centered around his head. So it kind of echoes a halo, but has more cosmic weight than a mere little halo. It's like he is the center of the universe. Not only the sun, but the moon as well. And here's the moon as this little silver sliver under that. This culture has contact with Europe. So we see some very interesting things show up. And it's difficult for you to contextualize this right now because we haven't gotten this late in Europe, but this is the 17th century. And so we have these little angel heads with wings come straight out of Europe. Take my word for it. You will see it later in Europe. So there's more here. There's more to show us how powerful Jahangir is. The two men are standing on a globe, a map of the world. Can you see it? This is Africa. This is the Arabian Peninsula. Right here is the Mediterranean. Over here is India. So that's pretty amazing. I think that's the first time we've seen that. And Jahangir is standing on a lion. And Shah Abbas is standing on a meek little lamb. Oh, it's so obvious. Seriously, the man is quite stuck on himself, and he wants to make sure that he goes down in history as being great, awesome, inspirational. I have another one of Jahangir, another bonus feature here where Jahangir, and this is done by a different artist, but you can tell that Jahangir is giving the orders to his artists and telling them exactly how he wants to be depicted. He's in control. He's the boss man. So Jahangir sitting on a throne here that is a giant hourglass, but his head is still in the center of the sun and the moon. And here are some of those little angels, which you will see much later. There's a group of men who have come to visit Jahangir. And he's, even though these three guys are present here, Jahangir is showing preference to this sheikh here. Wait, a Sufi sheikh, showing how very, very spiritual and in touch with his spiritual nature he is. But I've given you a detail of this to show you that there's a European man in the midst of this, wearing this very strange European clothing, this hat, this ruffled collar, things that, again, you will be seeing later when we get to that point in European art. And then this little man in yellows tucked down in the corner. This is our artist. This is Bichiter. And he is presenting a picture to Jahangir. The little angels down underneath on this lower level of the hourglass are writing something on the hourglass. They are, wait a minute, I've got this. They're writing a wish for Jahangir to live for 1,000 years. So it's kind of connected to the hourglass, like time will stop and our beloved ruler, the wonderful Jahangir, will live for 1,000 years. So that's pretty interesting stuff, I think. So the Mughal Empire in India, architects used the arches and domes of Islamic construction as well as stone carving in the inspired Taj Mahal. This was commissioned as a mausoleum, a tomb, for the favorite wife of Shah Jahan. Geometric symmetry is apparent in the identical facades of iwans flanked by two smaller iwans. 4 minarets surround the structure. So here it is. It's probably the most famous structure in India, and it's on people's lists. If they visit India, they must go see the Taj Mahal. And I believe it's showing up on your quiz. I will ask you what the purpose of it was, because it looks like a mosque, but it is not. It is a tomb, so don't forget. And you can see the beautiful symmetry is even accentuated by this reflecting pool in front of it and these parallel paths and the plantings. The minarets, of course, are just ornamental, that this would not have been served as a mosque. Nobody would be called to prayer. But look at the style of the architecture. So here's the dome over this Iwan. So it's exactly the same as the mosques that I showed you that came out of Persia and the East when we looked at Islamic art. And there's the Iwan there, and there's the dome. So it's very, very similar. Here's another more beautiful romantic picture of the Taj Mahal, showing 3 of the 4 minarets. So it's very, very symmetrical. And more reflection in a river this time with camels. Beautiful. So Rajput painting and the luxury art. So Rajput is Hindu painting, and the Rajput Hindi rulers often established painting workshops at their courts. Poets inspired by the Bhakti movement wrote metaphorically of the love of gods for humans. So because we've got these painted books that are popularized in India now, we get this being expressed in other cultures, in the indigenous Hindu culture as well. So the love of gods for humans is most frequently expressed as Krishna, loving Radha, the cow herder, cowgirl. Sorry. She takes care of cows. And this is an early one. This is a bonus feature that I include just because I really like it. So the gopis are all this group of girls. This is Krishna. He's always shown with blue skin, so he's easy to identify. Krishna is a deity. He's one of the avatars of Vishnu. So he's one of those main deities that I told you about in early Asian art. But this is just an avatar of Vishnu. So this is Krishna and the gopis from the Govinda. And I like it because it is so naive. It is so kind of childlike and kind of like folk art. I love the way that the trees have been illustrated, kind of splaying them out like giant fans, and there's two different trees. There are little birds floating around there. And then the humans are not painted naturalistically at all. Their heads are much too large for their bodies. Their eyes are drawn frontally. But it has just a real appealing quality to me. So I have some more Krishnas to show you. This is Krishna and Radha, his chosen one, in a pavilion. And again, I just want to emphasize that this iconography was to illustrate how much the gods, and in particular the god Krishna, loves human beings and loves completely. So this one shows the two alone in a pavilion having sex. So they're actually copulating in this picture. And that is represented symbolically as well by all of this fruit that just seems to be sprouting out of nowhere, out of the structure, as though it's a supernatural event, because, again, Krishna is a deity. And if you were unclear about what's happening between the two, the artist has put another sign up in the sky. This golden thread up there is actually supposed to be a lightning bolt that represents that electricity between the two in the pavilion. So, but this is the one that I believe came with the text. Another similar subject. It's Krishna hanging out with all of these cow maidens. This time, Krishna's skin is not nearly so deeply blue, but he's kind of faded. And this is him here. It looks like he's playing a flute, but he's with the cowherds, and they're bringing the cattle in for the night, probably putting them in an enclosure, the hour of cow dust, and it's just kind of fun because it shows a great variety of breeds of cattle. But I also look at all the details where we've got some suggestion of illusionism here with these buildings further away looking much smaller. Some people up here in this window gazing down and watching Krishna coming in with the girls. But what we don't see is linear perspective. We see diagonals, but they're not converging. So the Indian artists either don't understand or they choose not to use linear perspective. Just an interesting observation. We've seen this before. So, and here's an ivory chest that also shows that sensual naturalism that is indicative of Indian art, with this real comfort of having bodies looking very fleshy and sensual. This was the height of luxury, and they were exported. They were carved in India, designed in India. The motifs are Indian, but they were also exported to Europe. And here's an interesting tidbit. I mean, this particular one dates from the 17th and 18th century, but there was one, an ivory box that was carved in India, found at Pompeii. So the trade back and forth between East and West, between Europe and Asia, was going on for centuries across that Silk Road. And this is what I think the similarity is. I showed you this as one of the very first pieces. This was our early Buddhist art. This is the Yakshi at the Great Stupa of Sanchi, and how similar the style of the anatomy treatment is here. This is the end of chapter 9, part 1. I guess there are 3 parts, so stay tuned for part 2, which will be China. Oh, we'll go to Cambodia and China.